Alrighty. Looks like we are all ready. And let me record. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us for today's A Month of Service presentation of HOA or Homeowners Association Foreclosures. My name is Nia Murray. I am the Programs Coordinator with Neighborhood Recovery Community Development Corporation, and we are one of the partners in the A Month of Service collaboration. Also included, we have the City of Houston's Department of Neighborhoods, and joining us today, we have Ms. Rachel Gutierrez. Also, on behalf of our presenting partner with Lone Star Leonard Legal Aid, we have Mr. Amir Brafui, who's going to be providing you the information today about HOA foreclosures. There's a lot of information that we're going to cover here today. So we want to thank you guys and welcome you all for being here this afternoon. But really quick, also included in our partnership, we also have the Earl Carl Institute, Texas Legal Services Center, Houston Bar Association, Houston Volunteer Lawyers, Harris Central Appraisal District, and the Harris County Tax Assessor Collector's Office. And together we make up A Month of Service. And what A Month of Service is a collaboration of all 9 of our organizations. We come together on a monthly basis and offer a variety of different workshops, resources, information to the community relative to asset protection, asset building, the maintaining of generational wealth, and community empowerment. We know that there are a lot of underserved communities that are out there that don't have access to a lot of information, resources, nowhere to go for different types of assistance that is available to them. Whether it's any civil legal services or what have you, but there are services that are available, and we want to try to get as much information to the public as we possibly can. So we decided several years ago to come together and collaborate and try to create a larger impact or have a larger impact on what we do and making sure that this information actually gets out. And though we are now transitioned to a virtual platform, this platform has allowed us the opportunity to, in fact, reach more people and create and obtain a larger audience. So information that you do hear is not just relative to the city of Houston or Harris County. Know that the information is relevant to the entire state of Texas that you're going to hear from us today. Also keep in mind that the information that you do hear today is for educational purposes only. It is not to be considered legal advice. However, we do want to encourage you to reach out to our legal service partners if you find yourselves in need of any civil legal assistance. And Amir is going to go over into a little bit more detail about the other services that are available from Lone Star Legal Aid in addition to foreclosure assistance. With that being said, also note that we are recording this session as well as broadcasting live on our social media platforms on YouTube and on Facebook. So please keep in mind that this is your opportunity to ask questions, whatever it is that you may have questions about. But we want to ask that you keep your questions to be general in nature as you possibly can, as to not divulge any personal detail information getting out there for everybody to actually have access to. So just keep that in mind. So if you are joining us on Facebook or on YouTube, please feel free to type your question into the comment section and we'll make sure that it gets read aloud to the presenter at the end. If you're joining us via Zoom, please feel free to type your question or your comment into the chat section. Or otherwise, you can wait until the end of the presentation and unmute yourself and ask your questions directly of the presenters. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get started because, again, there's a lot of information that we're going to be covering here today. And again, thank you all for joining us. So Ms. Rachel, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Nia. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rachel Gutierrez. I am a community outreach coordinator for the Department of Neighborhood's Office of Neighborhood Engagement. On behalf of our Director Sims, and the Mayor Whitmire, we welcome you to the A Month of Service workshop. I do appreciate our partners who have graciously volunteered their time to present information to the public so that they are educated and empowered to not only, help themselves with, things that are an everyday occurrence in their lives, but also their neighbors. So we appreciate that, and we appreciate the community for being engaged with us. And we encourage for you guys to continue spreading the word about our amazing program and getting other people involved. We definitely want to continue this service and improve. So if there's any topics that you think that could benefit the program, definitely send it out to myself or Nia. We would take a look at it and see how we can get that information out there for you. But we do appreciate you guys and enjoy the workshop for today.
All right. All right, Amir, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourselves and you can move right on into your presentation?
Sure thing. Y'all just bear with me while I start sharing the screen, get the
Okay.
slideshow going. All right, how's everything looking?
You're good.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you both very much, Rachel and Nia. My name is Amir Bafroui. I'm a supervising attorney here at Lone Star Legal Aid. Um, we're going to be talking about Property Owners Association. That's the legal term for what most of us know as homeowners associations or HOAs. I want to talk today to dispel, to deliver some truth, dispel some myths, and let's talk about everything in between about the powers that homeowners associations have and the rights and responsibilities that people like you and me, Texas homeowners, Texas consumers have when working with an homeowners association. Now, as Nia mentioned, today's presentation is legal information, not legal advice. Let me just spell out the difference. Legal information is, I'm going to tell you this is the law. These are the rules. Legal advice would be, this is the law. These are the rules. This is your situation. Here's how to navigate that situation in your personal capacity. So if you have questions that you want to go over specifically that are specific to your situation, today's not the forum for that. I'm happy to answer any questions that y'all have generally. I also encourage each and every one of y'all to share this presentation. If you know somebody who is interested in this topic, but not able to attend live, a month of service, Nia, Rachel, they've done a great job making this available via recordings on YouTube, on their YouTube channel for a month of service. Share it with your friends, colleagues, people you know, someone needs to know this information. And that's why myself and my colleagues from my organization are here. We're here to share trusted, vetted legal information with y'all because although you can't see my diploma, I went to law school. Although you can't see my law license, I've passed the bar exam. Those are two indications that I'm better than Google lawyer. So, don't just, try to figure out your legal issues on your own. Really get trusted, vetted information. You can get a lot of that from the A Month of Service YouTube channel. So before we dive into everything we're going to talk about on homeowners associations today, I want to cover our agenda. The first 15, 16 slides are going to be about Lone Star Legal Aid generally. I'm going to move through those relatively quickly. But for those on the live or watching recording who may not have heard of Lone Star Legal Aid, we're going to go into detail on what my law firm does, what services we offer, and how we work with low-income Texans across the state. Then we're going to talk about understanding homeowners associations. So before you can run, you got to be able to walk. Before you can walk, you got to be able to crawl. We're going to start at the crawl stage, knowing what HOAs are, how they work, how they operate. Then we're going to talk about common issues with HOAs. We'll discuss HOA-led foreclosures and what evictions look like. And then at the very end, we're going to touch briefly on the Texas Homeowners Assistance Fund. And I'll go into more detail when we get to those slides. So Lone Star Legal Aid. We've been in this community for almost 76 years. We just celebrated our 75th birthday last fall. We protect and advance the civil legal rights of millions of Texans living in poverty. Now, when people hear the term poverty, they might think, well, I'm not poor, but most of our clients are the working poor. They're folks who are working 40 plus hours a week, 2-3 jobs, just trying to make ends meet for them and their families. And they qualify for free legal services from Lone Star Legal Aid. Just because you hear the term poverty, don't let that discourage you from reaching out for help from Lone Star Legal Aid. As the slide indicates, and I'm going to read briefly for y'all, Lone Star Legal Aid, we're not just in Houston, where I am currently located, where I live, where I grew up. We serve 76 counties. 72 of those are in Texas. 4 of those are in Southwest Arkansas. So another slide, we're going to go on to all of our offices. We have 14 offices. So our headquarters is in Houston. That's where I'm broadcasting to y'all from. We're in downtown Houston, but we're also in the greater Houston area, out in the suburbs, in the cities around, all throughout East Texas and parts of Central Texas. In the area that we serve, excuse me, there are almost 2 million people who are eligible for our services. Not everybody gets service. You see on the slide, there's 2 million people who are eligible. Last year, we helped 60,000. We do the best we can with what we got, but we do try to make as much of an impact for our clients as possible. A brief history of Lone Star Legal Aid. I mentioned that the law firm's been around since 1948. We're going on 76 years this year. Legal aid in the greater Houston area and East Texas has just been known by different names, and they've merged over the years. From the 40s and 50s and 60s, we're known as the Houston Legal Foundation. Then eventually in the in the 70s and 80s, you had the Gulf Coast Legal Foundation. Those were really serving the greater Houston area and parts of Beaumont, the upper Gulf Coast of Texas. Then you had East Texas Legal Services in Nacogdoches and behind the Piney Woods into East Texas. In the early 2000s, those organizations merged with another one out in Waco and Belton called Legal Aid of Central Texas to make Lone Star Legal Aid. So Lone Star Legal Aid as a name has been around for 20 plus years, but legal aid in the work that we've done in Texas has been around since the late 40s. So who do we help? So y'all heard me mention on a prior slide, we help low-income Texans, but really, what does that population look like? We help families with children. We help veterans. We help a lot of seniors. We help people in marginalized communities, folks who are homeless, and folks who are disabled. A majority of our clients are women, many of whom are mothers. Some of our rural clients face isolation due to lack of access to technology. They might have a phone, but internet service is slow, or they might not own a car and they're far away and there's no public transportation. We do the best we can to connect with those clients. We're very effective at it. We can't connect with every single one of the 2 million people, but the people that we are able to connect with, we have figured out ways, our advocates and case handlers have figured out ways to meet our clients where they are, really practice community lawyering, helping people in our community. So our mission is to protect and advance the civil legal rights of millions of Texans who are living in poverty by providing free advocacy, free legal representation, and free community education. That's what we're doing here today to ensure equal access to justice. Because just like I'm sure you heard your parents say, or maybe you're saying to your kids, like I do mine, knowledge is power. And that's what today is about. Now, eligibility in terms of who's eligible for our services. So I've touched on this briefly in some prior slides, but I want to cover it a little more comprehensively. We at Lone Star Legal Aid only handle civil legal issues. So I have a shorthand way of describing that. There's 2 ways. If you're facing jail time or the criminal justice system, you might potentially go to jail or get fined. That is not something that Lone Star Legal Aid can help you with. But if you're facing literally anything else, Lone Star Legal Aid more than likely can help. Another way to think about this is I like to say house, car, money, kids, or family. That's it. Your home, if you're a renter or a homeowner, we can help you with that. Car, if you have any sort of issues related to a car loan, debt, maybe you got ripped off by a mechanic or bought a lemon, a badly maintained car from a dealer, we can help you with that as well. Money, so we help a lot of our clients with food stamp issues or Social Security issues, public benefit issues. And kids, we help connect families with healthcare. We help people navigate divorce and custody disputes as well as child support. As I just mentioned, or I went into kind of a higher level in what we do. We have a wide variety of substantive law types. What does that mean? These are the different areas of the law that we have lawyers in which to practice. We have over 100 lawyers at Lone Star Legal Aid spread out across 14 offices. We help people in consumer law issues. So when you hear the term consumer, don't let your eyes glaze over. Anybody who buys anything at any time is a consumer. That means Every single person on this call, every single person watching this call later is a consumer. Employment law. So if you've had any issues with your boss or a contractor, that would be an employment law issue. Family law, helping connect people with healthcare and access their rights under Texas law. Housing law, that's my specialty, helping homeowners, and we're going to talk about that in more detail. Juvenile issues, neighborhood problems, public education and financial assistance and public benefits. These are more of a higher level overview of the work that we do at Lone Star Legal Aid. In addition to the substantive law that we just reviewed, we also have special projects. Now, I manage our foreclosure prevention project. I don't necessarily like the name. I like to say anything that has to do with your home, we can help you with. But in addition to that, we also have a variety of other special projects listed here on the slide. I'm not going to read them for y'all, but it allows our firm to really offer full service to Texans who are facing civil legal issues. Now, how do you ask for help, right? I've talked about all the things we do, but how do you get your foot in the door? So there's 3 ways to contact Lone Star Legal Aid and see if you're eligible and then get some help. You can go to our website 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. On our website, there's a bunch of really good, useful, vetted legal information. The lawyers and case handlers here at Lone Star Legal Aid know what they're talking about before it goes on the website. But 2, you can apply for our services online conveniently at your own time. Our 1-800 number is listed on the slide. It's 1-800-733-8394. You can contact that number Monday through Friday between 8 and 4:30 to apply for services over the phone. Or you can come to our offices. Again, I'm going to go over where they are located and apply in person. Just walk into one of our offices and apply in person. So I mentioned that we have 14 offices. Let's go over those locations. So in addition to Houston, which is on this slide, we're in downtown Houston. We also have an office in Beaumont, in Southeast Texas. Belton, which is closer to Central Texas between Waco and Austin. Bryan, so that's near College Station, again, getting closer to Central Texas. Clute, which is down near Freeport. Conroe, north of the Houston area. We're on Galveston Island as well. We have an office in East Texas in Longview. We're also in Nacogdoches. Paris, Texas, which is up near I-30 between Dallas and Texarkana. We're also in Texarkana, right there on the Texas-Arkansas border. That's where we're able to serve our clients in Texas and Arkansas. We're in Tyler, Texas, Richmond, southwest of the greater Houston area, and also in Waco. So those are the 14 Lone Star Legal Aid offices. If you or a friend or family member lives in basically the greater East Texas area, greater Houston area, or near Bryan, College Station, or Waco, Lone Star Legal Aid exists. It is there to help. So now that we've covered all of the things about Lone Star Legal Aid, let's pivot to understanding property owners associations, or HOAs. You might hear me use both of those terms today. I'm talking about the same kind. So we can really learn the truths, dispel the myths, and empower everyone with the knowledge to know what they're dealing with. So as I just mentioned, there's so many acronyms, right? POA, Property Owners Association, HOA, Homeowners Association, COA, Condo Owner Association. These are contractually created organizations that are private nonprofit corporations that theoretically can govern themselves. Basically, they're corporations, they're nonprofit, they don't exist to make money. They're not voluntary. So if you buy into a condominium complex, it might look like an apartment complex, or it might look like a high rise, and they have a condo owners association, you don't get to negotiate whether it applies to you or not. It applies to you. It's part of the obligation of buying into that complex. If you live out in the suburbs, like I do, and you buy in a neighborhood where there is a homeowners association that covers that subdivision, you don't get to negotiate with it to say, I don't need it. I don't need this here. It's part of buying your home out there. We're going to go over a little bit later the extent of HOAs. I can just preview it very briefly. If you bought a house in the last 20, 30 years, like 2/3 to 75% of those houses in Texas have a homeowners association. So this is becoming a more and more prevalent form of governing neighborhoods. So let's talk about some more basics. Homeowners associations are corporations. So when they're created, they have an articles of incorporation. This is a document that says this is what this corporation will do. This is important because articles of incorporation are filed with the Texas Secretary of State. So if you're really interested, or if you're a lawyer, you can go and look up this information online, contact the Secretary of State, and find the articles of incorporation to see what it is your corporate HOA indicated it would do when it was created. Then they have powers and rights. So they don't get to do whatever they want just because they exist. There's a contract called the Declaration of Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions. Sometimes this is referred to as the declarations, or CC&R, CC&R being covenant, conditions, and restrictions. This is literally a contract that whoever developed the neighborhood or whoever built the condo said, these are the rules, these are the things the HOA is going to do. And these are the obligations that the homeowners who buy in this neighborhood or buy in this condo have to follow. HOAs also have bylaws. So, think of these as rules for the meeting, right? Corporations have rules for when they have meetings. The bylaws are where you're going to find those. And then they're also going to have rules and regulations. So the way I like to think of it is who can use the pool and when, or when do the lights turn on at the tennis court? Those are really the community rules, the regulations. Who can bring guests to the neighborhood pool? How do you get access to the clubhouse to rent it out? Those kind of things. Excuse me. Now, who controls HOAs? We're going to go into all of these things in more detail, but the HOA is controlled by the association's board of directors. Now, these are your neighbors who have either been appointed, they asked for this, or they ran for it in an election. Your neighbors elected these people to be the board of directors. These folks generally don't get paid. If they do get paid, maybe they're just getting, their meals paid for, their mileage to drive to an office to do these meetings, but they're not being paid a salary. This is truly volunteer work. And you can think there's a wide variety of motivations to do that. Most people that I've found who serve on HOA boards are very community minded. Others less so, but that's really a vocal minority. Let's talk in more detail about the declarations of covenants, conditions, and restrictions, or CCRs. This is the contract that creates the rules and powers of the Property Owners Association. As I mentioned before, generally, this is not just created out of thin air. It's not just created out of the blue. When a new neighborhood or a new condo is being built, you can go out to any one of the suburbs and see new houses being built or new condos being built inside the city. When the developer who's doing all that construction starts planning, that developer will create these CC&Rs so that there is a set of rules for what the homeowners or condo owners are going to have to follow once the building or the subdivision is finally built. Now, here's an example. It's hard to read on the slides, but this is an example of what the first page of a covenant and CC&Rs look like. It's written with all these lawyerly language, some old English like witnesseth. A lot of I'm going to refer to the greater Houston area, but a lot of the homeowners associations that you'll see, it's difficult to read on the slide, but this was filed in the deed records in Harris County in 1983. So, that we're talking about a 41-year-old HOA. And this is for a subdivision on the northeast side, near Humble, that, it's been around for 41 plus years. Now here's another part of the declarations for HOAs. I've highlighted this part because this is honestly, when you see these terms, covenant for maintenance assessments, creation of the lien, and personal obligation for assessments, a red flag or a red light, warning light needs to go off in your head. This is where most people get sideways with their homeowners association. So most folks, and we're going to talk about this in more detail, know about the horror stories of the HOAs, and we're going to talk about those. Paint my house pink, don't let me feed the ducks, that kind of thing. But how do HOAs pay for things in the neighborhood? If it's a condo, how do they pay for the roof or the foundation when that needs to be fixed. You know, we just had a hurricane come through 6, 7 weeks ago. The condo association is responsible for the roof for the entire building. How do they pay for the repairs? How does the subdivision HOA out in Katy or Sugar Land or wherever pay for the pool when they have to hire lifeguards, or pay for the chlorine, or repaint the tennis court, or pay the electric bill for the lights? They pay for them by charging all of the homeowners what's generally referred to as an assessment. Now, if you live in a condo, you're probably paying your assessments once a month. If you live in a subdivision in the suburbs, or even in the inner loops of Houston, you're probably paying your assessments once a year. The power to charge those assessments comes from the declaration, the CC&Rs. And I emphasize power because HOAs aren't asking people to do things out of the kindness of their heart. This page right here, which I don't expect y'all to read, I've highlighted the part that's important, indicates that if you don't pay your HOA assessment whenever it's due, whether it's monthly or yearly, the HOA has a lien on your house. Now, what does a lien mean? A lien means they have the legal right to foreclose on your house and sell it. Now, I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to talk about foreclosure a little bit later in the presentation, but I wanted to emphasize that if you're in a dispute with your homeowners association, or if you're just trying to educate yourself, go take a look at your declarations of covenants, conditions, and restrictions, the CC&Rs. Most HOAs put them on their website. If they're not on their website, there is a way to find them either in the deed records for whatever county you live in, or there's actually a state mandated website that's about 2 years old where you might be able to find them. We'll talk about it in a little bit more detail, but read through them. And if you see anything that talks about maintenance assessments and lien, that's the part that I would highlight and read 2 or 3 times front and back. So here's another portion of those same declarations where it talks about the election of the board of directors, or actually it just talks about the board of directors. And these are the people, as I mentioned before, these are your neighbors. They're either appointed or elected, and they're the ones controlling what the HOA does, right? Most people think of the HOA and they think of this big thing, but it's really, somewhere between, it's some odd number. It's all so you can have a tie-breaking vote, but it's 5, 7, 9, 11 people just like you that live in your neighborhood or live in your condo that are just trying to do the best they can for the overall community. Another part of homeowners associations that most people think about is they tell me what I can do with my house, right? They tell me what color the shingles need to be. They tell me how tall my fence needs to be. They tell me when I need to fix it. They tell me when I need to pressure wash the driveway or fix the sidewalk or trim the trees. That's generally referred to as the Architectural Control Committee, which I've highlighted here. Most, if not all, HOAs that I've reviewed, when I look at their declarations, all have an Architectural Control Committee. They might not be called the same thing. I think this HOA for my neighborhood is called the Architectural Review Committee. It's the same thing, right? It's a group, it's a subgroup of the HOA. And it might be a company that the HOA hires, or it might be those same neighbors that is looking at what people are trying to do to their houses, if they want to replace the roof or put solar panels or fix the fence after the hurricane, and making sure that everyone's following the same rules to keep the neighborhood looking nice and to keep it looking uniform. Now, we've talked a lot about the declarations. I want to move on to that next document that I previewed for y'all several slides ago, which is the bylaws. So many property owners associations have their own bylaws, which are used to govern how the HOA does its business. So how often are they going to have the meetings? Are they going to be on the third Thursday of every other month? What time are the meetings going to be held? Where are the meetings going to take place? Who can talk at the meetings? How long will the meetings take place? How many members of the HOA board are going to be on the Architectural Control Committee? Those are going to be the kind of things that you're going to see spelled out in the bylaws. It's really the nitty gritty. What I'm working through here, what I want you to understand here is when you're thinking about HOAs, we're going to start at the top. So you have your declarations. We're going to move down. You have your bylaws. And you're going to get even closer to the bottom with the rules and regulations. These 3 things really control everything that an HOA does and will help you as a homeowner or a prospective homeowner, whether in a condo or a house, understand your rights and responsibilities with your HOA and what rules they have to follow as well. Now, I mentioned on here, it might be intimidating to hear about all these documents, but I've found that most HOAs put it on their website. So if you just Google search the name of your homeowners association and they have a website, more often than not, they have a tab titled documents, and then it's not behind a password. You can just go in there, find the declarations, download it, give it a read, find the bylaws, download them, give them a read, and make sure you're up to speed on the rules and regulations. So here's another example of typical bylaws. These are, again, they're written by lawyers for HOAs, for small corporations. So if the language doesn't make sense, trust your instincts. I went to law school 12 years ago, and I joke that I spent 3 years in law school learning how to talk like a lawyer, and I've spent the last 12 years learning how to talk like a human being. So legal language is designed to be clear, but it's also designed to be read by lawyers. So if it doesn't make sense, read it a couple of different times, Google the terms, highlight the definitions as you see here, and then go back and forth. Work through it slowly until it does make sense for you. Now, another page in the bylaws, we're talking about the meetings here. Again, this is just examples building on what I shared with y'all earlier. Here's another section of the bylaws where they're talking about, how long members or directors rather will serve as officers. Again, this gets into the nitty-gritty of how this nonprofit corporation, and that's what an HOA is. It's a nonprofit corporation, how it's going to be run. Now let's talk about rules and regulations. Many HOAs have their rules and regulations governing details about how living in the community will be controlled. So this might be, as I mentioned before, hours that the pool is going to be open. My neighborhood, the pool's open from Memorial Day to Labor Day, and they're open. Well, actually, they're open a little bit later this year. And then, they're open from 11 to 9. Now I know that's in the rules and regulations. It's clear. Clear communication, I think, resolves a lot of misunderstandings, and that's the goal, at least as I understand it, with homeowners associations. That's how I understand life. As I mentioned before, you can often find these rules and regulations on the HOA's website if it has one. Here's an example of one of the homeowners associations I've worked with that's up in Tascasita, northeast of Humble, or in the northeast near Humble. This is talking again. I keep coming back to the swimming pool analogy or example, but I keep seeing it in these rules and regulations, so it's something to be aware of. Now, how can you get more information about your HOA? So think about that waterfall, right? The declarations, the bylaws, the rules and regulations. Work your way down. Review those governing documents. When you hear me refer to that, I'm talking about the declarations, the bylaws, and the rules and regulations. You can send a letter to your HOA or an email if they have an email account requesting this information if you can't find it on their website. By law, under Texas law, so we've talked about 3 sets of documents they have to follow, but there's also Texas law that they have to follow. They as in the HOA, has to make their records, these documents, available for inspection. So if they have an office, they have to, tell you the office hours and when you can come in and look at them. Most HOAs, like 9 times out of 10, they'll just email it to you. They ain't trying to hide nothing. Here I've highlighted on the slide, if you're looking for the rules that HOAs have to follow in Texas, if you live in a condo, you're looking at Chapter 81 and Chapter 82 of the Texas Property Code. If you live in a townhome or a subdivision style house, so, think of your typical suburban home, those HOAs are regulated or controlled by chapters 202 through 209 of the Texas Property Code. So 202, 203, 204, 205, 206, 207, 208, 209. So you got a lot more regulation for subdivision style HOAs, but there's just a lot more of them. Now, as I mentioned before several times, like if you wanted to go and find documents from your HOA, just Google them. So I was working with a client who lived in the subdivision of Atascocita South. The HOA was known as the Atascocita South Community Improvement Association. So I just Googled that name. Here's a screenshot from their website. Right on their website is a tab titled Documents. Click on that and you can see articles of incorporation, bylaws, CC&R. So that's the declarations. It's able to access all of this information and download it without having a password. Now, this is majority of the time, this is what you're going to have. Sometimes HOAs will put this information behind a portal. In that case, just, work with your homeowners association board to make sure you're set up to access the portal. If not, reach out. Most homeowners associations have a management company. We're going to talk about what that is in a minute. And they should be able to help you get access to the information as well, because they're required to share it. So earlier I mentioned that there is a website that you can go to gather a lot of this information. If for some reason your HOA either doesn't have it online, or maybe they're not very responsive to your letter or emails. So this is getting what's called the management certificate. It's one document, but that one document will tell you where to find everything else. Think of it as a table of contents for the book that is your homeowners association. So the website is listed here at the bottom. I'm going to read it out for those of y'all listening. It's www.hoa.texas.gov/management-certificates-search. And I'm going to, the next slide is a screenshot of that website, but this has the contact information for the HOA itself, so the corporate entity, the management company that's working with the HOA, and possibly more contact information. Maybe if they have a lawyer or a law firm that they have hired permanently to work with them regularly, or if they have put the contact information for board members on there. I doubtful that they'll have the board members on there because they rotate off, and these management certificates are updated, every couple of years. So here is a screenshot of that hoa.texas.gov website. Here, if you search for the name of your homeowners association, and I want to emphasize, it's like a plain language search. Take the name of your HOA, put it in name search. This is what you're going to see. You're going to see all of the different HOAs that have names or similar names to the one you entered. You click on it, and then you'll see right in the middle of the page, management certificate. It's in a PDF. You can download it, and it's free. This is designed by the Texas legislature to empower homeowners to be able to get more information so that they can, know what their rights, know what the HOA's responsibilities are, and make sure they're protected. Because again, going back to that theme I've mentioned, knowledge is power.
Amir, got a quick question for you in regards to this site. What if you don't know if you have an HOA? Is there another way to search as opposed to finding a name?
That's a great question. You wouldn't know what name to search, right? So the short answer is no, there's not a way to search this website well, I guess you could search by, your zip code and then kind of narrow it there. But the thing is, if you were to search by your zip code, you would see a bunch of different names of different HOAs, and you might not know, if you don't know if your HOA has a name, you wouldn't know which name is associated with your neighborhood. That being said, what I would encourage that person to do, if you're in that bucket where it's like, I live in a neighborhood or I live in a condo, I don't know if we have an HOA, I don't know its name. Look at the documents that you got when you bought your house. So most people know this as the closing documents. This is when you got your deed to your condo or your house. And all HOAs give what's called a notice to homeowner or notice to condo owner. And it'll say, it's like a 1 or 2 page document. And it'll say something to the effect of, you're hereby notified that your condo or your house is subject to, and there's a blank, and then the name of the homeowners association is typed in there. And it'll specify this is a property owners association. They have, certain powers. They're not going to spell it all out. It's really a general form, but that's to let you know, hey, FYI, there's an HOA here. And I always see that when I'm reviewing files for my clients. Like that document's always been provided whenever they bought their house. So that would be the surefire, the most surefire way to be able to verify if you have a homeowners association. Take that information, go check this website, and get more information to empower yourself. Great question. So jumping to the next slide, here's an example of a management certificate. So again, I'm going to jump back 2 slides here. You want the management certificate to get information. You go to this website to find the management certificate. When you get it, okay, here it is. What does it say? Well, it says the name of your homeowners association is this. Here is where you can find the declarations and CC&Rs for the different parts of the association. If we had more of this management certificate, it's generally about a 10 to 11 page form. If we had more of this on the slides, you would see here is the name of our management company. And again, I will explain what a management company is. Here's their phone number. Here's their email address. It's like the information you need to literally interact with this corporate entity. I don't mean to keep using lawyerly language, but I want to emphasize that think of an HOA as a corporation, a small corporation. You could think of it differently as a small local business, but it's one that's there in your neighborhood, there in your condo development, whether it's, apartment style looking at condos or tower, and it's there to do a job. And if you want to know who to call at that company, that corporation, the management certificate is going to have it all there for you. So let's jump back to Property Owners Association boards. Bear with me one second. There we go. So as I mentioned before, Property Owners Association boards are made up of either people who have been initially appointed by the developer. So think about when a neighborhood or a condo is being newly built, there's no homeowners to run for office. Like no one's bought a house. It's just dirt and roads, or it's the frame of the building that will eventually have the condos. So the developer then appoints a bunch of people to be on the HOA board. Now, that HOA board has very little, if anything, to do, but they exist and they have a job. There's a process by which people will get elected to that. And that process is spelled out in the declarations and also in the bylaws as they're drafted by that initial board. So after a new subdivision or new condo is built, the developer appoints people to be on the HOA board. Generally, what you'll find is as about 50% of the homes or condos are sold off, there's a trigger mechanism that says now there needs to be an election. And the election is where you're going to see your neighbors who are interested in and community minded or have other motivations running to be on the HOA board. Think of it as a very, very small, very local election. And as I mentioned before, these are generally community minded volunteers. They ain't getting paid, that live in the same neighborhood. And they're going to have certain opinions about, how the condo needs to be kept up, or how the how the neighborhood needs to be kept up to make sure that it stays nice. And that's a subjective term. Everyone has a different definition of nice, and uniform. So what does the board do? Well, it does whatever it's allowed to do under Texas law, whatever the declarations tell it to do, and whatever it says it's going to do under the bylaws. That's very, very broad, and there's a reason for that. They can't do anything they want, but Texas is a lower regulation state. They want people to be able to get organized without having to look over their shoulders, but also be nice to your neighbor, treat people respectfully. So Texas law does dictate that HOA boards have to have one meeting a year so that it's public, so that neighbors, homeowners, condo owners can come, understand what's going on, speak up. And then they also have to follow, as I mentioned before, the restrictions and regulations under Texas law. So I've talked about it enough. Here's the management company slide. Management companies kind of fill a gap that naturally exists in how HOA boards are set up. So let's take a step back. I've said several times that HOA boards are made up of volunteers that are your neighbors, community-minded people that live in your same neighborhood or condo. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't like working very long for free. And most people, I feel, fall into that category. At a certain point, I have other things that I need to do, and an HOA has a lot of things that need to be done. So how do you fill that gap? Most homeowners associations fill that gap by hiring a professional management company. So this will be someone who can help prepare the website, maintain it, respond to emails, They handle the billing and correspondence with homeowners, and they will regularly update the HOA board, again, those elected volunteers, on the business side of the homeowners association. Think of another way to think of it is management companies. They're the people who literally go out and find the lifeguards and buy the chlorine for the neighborhood pool, or they figure out where to get the new net for the tennis court, or how to find the contractor to fix the parking garage for the condo. HOA, volunteer boards might not have that expertise. And so these professional management companies fill that gap. Now, we're going to talk about this a little bit more in detail, but the management company is really the public facing side of the HOA. I've mentioned before, there's an elected board, but if you are interacting with your HOA, you're probably talking to somebody at the management company before you talk to anybody on the board. Now, I mentioned it earlier, and I keep saying that phrase. I mentioned it earlier. I have a bad habit of previewing my slides because it's all here. More HOAs are coming. So newer homes, keep having HOAs built in them. Newer subdivisions, newer condos have HOAs built in them. I'm going to go to a slide that's going to be difficult to read, but I promise I will read it to y'all and give you the summary. On this slide is census data. So this goes through 2022. And it shows that in this is looking at new single family home houses completed. So these are new homes that have been built, not yet sold. In 2009, in the thousands, 520,000 houses were built in 2009. Out of that number, 46% were in a homeowners association. Now, fast forward 13 years to 2022. In 2022, just over 1 million homes were built. And out of those million, 66% were built in a neighborhood subject to a homeowners association. So that's a 20% increase in just 13 years. You can see where the trends are going. This next slide is for new single-family homes that have been sold. So they're not just built, they've now been sold. And similarly, in 2000, this data set goes from 2009 to 2022, and again, it's census data. It shows that 375,000 houses were built in 2009. Out of those, I'm sorry, built and sold. Out of those houses that were sold, 62% of them were in a homeowners association. So you think there's a little bit of a gap from what was on the previous slide. It seems like there's a preference to buy a home. Right, more homes are being built, but 62% of those homes that are being built, more than half, are being bought, and those have HOAs. Now, fast forward to 2022, right? We've moved forward 13 years. 641,000 houses have been built and sold, and 84% of those homes are in neighborhoods or condos with an HOA. That's it's 4 out of 5 houses in 2022 had an HOA, and this is just Texas. Well, I'm sorry, this is the United States. I'm sorry, I had other slides that talked about Texas, but I've updated them. And this is just to show you how prevalent homeowners associations have become. So as I've said many, many times, knowledge is power. You now have the basics, and you can go back to the recording once this is uploaded to the A Month of Service YouTube channel and rewatch this 30, 40-minute portion to really understand where do HOHs come from? How do they work? What are the rules they have to follow? And who are the players? Now let's talk about common issues with property owners associations, or HOAs. So I'm going to give you guys some slides. These are real headlines from local news. So in 2022, there was a couple in Cypress. That's a neighborhood north and west of Houston that was sued for up to $250,000 by their HOA for feeding the ducks. And that HOA threatened to take their home. This was in the Houston Chronicle. If you were to just search HOA Ducks Houston Chronicle, you'd find the link to be able to review the rest of this article. Another Chronicle article, and this one's from 2024. This again being in Cyprus, is that the HOA hired a company to suit the ducks, right? They got a duck problem. They apparently have a duck problem up in Cyprus, and the HOA is taking matters into its own hands. Don't feed the ducks in Pearland either. Click to Houston Channel 2 in the greater Houston area. Had this article talking about how the HOA encouraged homeowners to shoot the ducks that were coming. And yeah, I mean, if you go into any of these articles, they talk about how the ducks are an invasive species, and it's not just one or two. Like, one homeowner would feed one, and then 100 would show up, and they'd really wreak havoc on the property. And I'm not here to be a duck advocate or a duck downer. Just sharing the news to let y'all know some common issues with HOAs. Now, having heard those three somewhat comical headlines, I did want to emphasize and throw a bone to HOAs. Property owners associations exist to protect the neighborhood, not protect you from everything, but preserve property values and keep things looking nice. And they do the best to control what's under their control, the portions of the neighborhood that are under their control. Here is a headline from a HOA in Conroe that sued a gun range that was next door because stray bullets from that gun range were literally going through neighbors' homes, ending up in walls, and damaging, the playgrounds that the HOA was responsible for. And this was from February of this year, 2024. So let's talk about common issues and abusive HOA practices. So as I put on this slide, I'm going to read it out just to make sure, whatever screen you're looking at while you watch the recording or watch it live, you're able to see this. Common issues include general dysfunction and mismanagement, debt collection activities, both informal and legal action, coercive settlement negotiations, so where you feel like there's really a difference in the power dynamic, and personal disputes. So common issues in abusive practice with HOAs is there are lots of paperwork and deadlines, including demands for you to turn over documents. So when if you get sued by your HOA and they're telling you to turn over paperwork to prove you are who you are and this is what you want to do in the lawsuit, this is called legal discovery. Once an HOA starts the legal process, once they involve a lawyer, the expenses can increase very quickly. I had a client that I helped for 4+ years who had been sued by their homeowners association. They owed the HOA about $750, and the bill quickly skyrocketed to $12,000. Majority of that was attorney's fees. And this is not to say it's good or bad. It's just what HOAs do. These costs can become very exorbitant very, very quickly. Property owners associations can turn nasty, involve lots of emotion, and create bad blood, because if you think about it, it's someone telling you what to do with your home, right? I don't think anybody on the call watching this live or on recording wants to be told what to do in the place they lay their head at night. As long as you ain't bothering anybody, just leave me alone. It's natural to feel strongly and react that way if you feel the tranquility of your home, where you and your family sleep at night, is being threatened, whether through foreclosure or someone telling you forgot to turn in the right paperwork. It just kind of creates a little bit of a fight or flight response. Just as a quick aside, this is not legal information or advice. Don't respond to that email immediately. Take a day. If you get that letter or that email from the HOA that causes that fight or flight response, take a day, right? Look at it the next day. This is sometimes referred to as the Abraham Lincoln rule, because the story goes, his general wasn't doing too hot during the Civil War. He wrote a letter to fire him, put it in his desk, looked at it the next day, tore it up because he wasn't too pleased with some of the language that he had used, right? It's really easy to speak out of turn, maybe speak emotionally when you're hot. So moving on, the most common issues homeowners associations have with their property owners association or HOA is falling behind on payment of their assessments. So let's talk about what that means. So earlier I went through the declarations and covenants and CCRs to explain, like, hey, this is the part that you really need to pay attention to. Remember, HOAs don't exist to be your friend. They're not your enemy. They have a job to do, and their job is to maintain the condo building or maintain the neighborhood. They need money to do that, and you need to pay your assessments in order for them to be able to do their job. And if people don't pay, Then the HOAs start following through on what their contract, the declarations or CC&Rs allow them to do. And that generally involves hiring a lawyer or having the management company send you a couple of letters, the management company then recommending that the HOA hire a lawyer, and then the lawyer either sending you letters or taking you to court just to collect this bill. Now, there's rights and responsibilities on both sides. I'm not trying to take one side or the other here, but this is the most common issue for people with their homeowners association. So building on that background, knowing that the most common issue being the assessments issue, I wanted to share a case study. So in Houston, Texas, the board, so these are the volunteers of the condominium association, was accused of abusing its powers. And part of what it was accused of was raising the assessments every month or every couple of months, because this was a condo, so assessments are charged monthly. And they were raising assessments, and the homeowners who accused them of abusing their powers said they were doing this to force out fellow condo owners who maybe lived on a fixed income and could not afford these increases. And when I'm saying, monthly assessments, I don't know what the average would be, but I've seen assessments as low as $200 a month, as high as $750 per month. And that bill never goes anywhere. As long as you live in that condo, you keep paying it. In fact, it'll probably just go up every year or every time there's a major repair that needs to be made. So with that background, these homeowners on fixed incomes felt like they were being forced out because the bills kept going up, but their income could not keep up. And condos have the right, condo owner associations, like all most HOAs, have the right to foreclose and sell your property. Here's a screenshot of the article. This was from 2019, so it is 5 years ago. This is August 2019. But if you were to just search for this, search for the title of this article, you'd be able to find the link and read more details about it. There was a lawsuit involved. I don't know the resolution because I believe there was a settlement. But I gave you all the background on what a common case study, not a common, a more extreme case study of what things can look like when people get sideways with their HOAs and are not able to pay the assessments. So let's talk about that next step that I teased just a moment ago. Realized I somehow turned off the video. I've been here the entire time. Let's talk about property owners association led foreclosures, and then what comes after a foreclosure, which is an eviction. So your property owners association probably has a lien on your home that allows it to enforce its rules by threatening or actually foreclosing on your home. What does that mean? A lien is a property right. If you own your home, you have the ability to let someone lease it, which is a property right. Let someone, dig for water, which is a property right. Let someone look for oil and gas. Most people know that as mineral rights, but that's a property right. And you have the right to pledge it, for a mortgage. That's where you give a mortgage, a lien, the right to take your house in return for you paying back if you don't pay back your mortgage. Well, HOAs have that same property right. I'm not going to say 100% of them do, because I've seen a handful over my 12-ish years who do not have a lien. But those are few and far between. A vast, vast majority, I want to say like 95%, have a lien on your home. When you hear the word lien, think foreclosure, because that's if an HOA has to use its lien, that means it's trying to foreclose to get you to pay some money. So as I mentioned here, lien means your HOA more than likely can foreclose on your home. And that's not something that anyone wants done, including the HOA. So I'm going to take a step back here from just talking about HOA foreclosures to talk about foreclosures generally. I think it's important to understand that background, and then we'll go into a deeper dive on how HOAs can actually foreclose in Texas. So Texas is referred to as a non-judicial foreclosure state. That means there's times where a home or a condo could be foreclosed and you ain't going to court, right? You're not going to have your day in court. You're not going to see a judge. Foreclosure auctions are held on the first Tuesday of every month. This is more often than not the case with mortgages. So the money you use to buy your house, if you don't pay, the foreclosure process can be done over a couple of letters over several months, and then your house can be sold at a public auction. It'll be sold on the first Tuesday of the month. So thinking about that, there's only 12 foreclosure auctions in the year in Texas because there's only one first Tuesday of every one of our 12 months. The next foreclosure auction in Texas will be September the 3rd, which is the day after Labor Day. So getting a little bit deeper on the non-judicial foreclosure process, before foreclosing on a mortgage, and I'm emphasizing mortgage right now, we're not talking about HOAs, we're going to come back to them. The mortgage company must first send you a notice of default sent to you by certified mail, and it has to give you at least 20 days to fix the problem. So it could read something like, you are $1,000 behind on your mortgage payments. You now have 20, 30, 45 days to pay. If you don't pay, we're going to take the next steps. The next step would be them mailing you another letter sent by certified mail saying, you didn't fix it. We set a deadline. You didn't fix it. Now we're going to sell your house, and we're going to sell it on the first Tuesday of the month. Now they have to put that letter that says they're going to sell your house in the mail 21 days in advance of the first Tuesday of the month. So if you were to find the first Tuesday, in September, subtract 21 days, you're really looking about the middle of the prior month. Now, I want to emphasize something with these two letters. Texas law requires them to be sent. It requires them to be sent by certified mail. It does not require them to actually be received. So if you refuse to sign for your certified letters, it ain't going to stop the process. If you're not home, if you're on vacation, it ain't going to stop the process. And this is why it's referred, and the last bullet point on this slide saying very few mortgages require a lawsuit to foreclose. A lawsuit puts you in front of a judge. I took you through the non-judicial foreclosure process. Non-judicial means no judge. So this process can be very quick. It rarely does move that quickly, but there's not a whole lot of stopping it once it gets started. So I want to emphasize something here that HOAs can only foreclose if you do not pay your assessments. There are other types of fines, some fees, charges, things that HOAs will try to collect from you. But if you don't pay your either monthly assessments for your condo or your annual assessments for your subdivision or townhome, then the HOA can foreclose. Only in that case. Now, I put on this slide, this is not an exhaustive list. This is not the only things that HOAs can't foreclose on. That's a double negative. But if you don't pay fine, if they fine you for not picking up your trash cans, they can't take your house. If you paint your house pink and the rules say it's brown or black or gray, they can't foreclose on you. If you have a broken down car in your driveway, the HOA will fine you. They might even take you to court. They might say you owe them like $200 a day for every day that you violate the rules, but they cannot take your house. If your roof was damaged during, the recent storm and you lack the money or your insurance lapsed and you don't have the ability to fix it, that's a terrible situation, but at least the HOA cannot take your house. There's a number of other situations, and it's all coming back to as long as you pay your assessments, the HOA cannot take your house. So coming back to the foreclosure process for HOAs, there are two types of HOAs that I've talked about. What I like to refer to as subdivision style homes. So I have a picture here on the slide of, what I think most people would think of as the suburbs, right? All the houses look the same. They're all laid out pretty close to each other. You got about 12 feet between the end of your house and the start of your neighbor's house, and there's a fence in the middle. And then on the right side, you have condo owners association. And condos are unique. I want you to think of it this one way. If you share a wall with the building next to you, it's probably a condo. So you might be living in what you think of as a townhome in the greater Houston area, but if you share walls with somebody, it's probably a condo. Call it a townhome, call it whatever you want, but legally it's a condo. It's not just a high rise in downtown. On the southwest side of Houston, 59 exit Bissonnette, there's a bunch of what look like old apartment buildings, like 2-3 stories tall. And in the 70s, they were apartments. And in the 80s, they got converted to condos because of the oil bust. So condos, You heard everything I just said. If you share a wall with somebody else and you own what's inside your little box, that's probably a condo. Why is that important? Well, HOAs for single family homes. So you don't share a wall with anybody. So your subdivision or your townhome that's not sharing a wall. In order for the HOA to start the foreclosure process, first they have to send what's called a pre-collection letter, or sometimes it's called a 209 letter because of the section of the property code that it comes from. That has to be sent certified mail and has to tell you you have 45 days to pay a specific amount of money. So certified mail, 45 days, specific amount of money, and it has to tell you you can request a payment plan and how to do it. If that lawsuit's not, if that letter is sent, the letter also has to say, if you don't do all of these things within the 45 days, we're going to turn this over to an attorney, or what's referred to as a collection agent, but they're talking about an attorney. In order for them to take the next step, they, as a corporation, have to have a lawyer. They can't represent themselves. And that lawyer will file a lawsuit against you, and they're going to go to court. They're going to ask a judge to agree that the HOA can foreclose. Now, the HOA can threaten foreclosure, but they can't actually foreclose, meaning sell your house, until the judge signs an order saying, yep, HOA, you're good to go. You can schedule this home to be sold on the first Tuesday of the month. So for homeowners associations, for houses and subdivisions, you really have 4 steps. I've listed 3, but we talked about the 4th one a few slides ago. There's the pre-collection letter. There's the lawsuit. There's the judge's order. And then after the judge's order, the HOA has to schedule your home for the first Tuesday, and they have to put that letter that I mentioned in the mail, the certified mail letter saying, hey, we're going to sell your house. We're putting this letter in the mail 21 days in advance. And, if you don't do anything between now and the first Tuesday, your house will be sold and sold to somebody else. You're not going to be the owner of your home. That's the process for subdivision or townhomes that do not share a wall, that have a homeowners association. Now, if you live in a condo, and remember my quick rule, right? If you share walls with somebody and you own it, that's probably a condo. They can follow the same non-judicial foreclosure process that we talked about several slides ago. So most condos, what they're allowed to do under Texas law is send you a notice saying, hey, this is how many assessments you're behind. This is the amount of money. Pay it, please. Here's the deadline. And if you don't do it by the deadline, then they're going to schedule your home for a foreclosure auction. And they're only going to send a couple of letters, and you're not going to court. Now, some condos self-impose a higher duty on themselves. So Texas law does not say they got to take you to court. Texas law says subdivision style houses got to take you to court. There's sections in the property code that require that. But Texas law does not say that for condos. Some HOAs in their declarations will say, we will only foreclose if we sue someone. That's not required, but they are allowed to basically raise the burden for themselves. Now, we've talked about what the foreclosure process looks like from beginning to end. If you are, either you or someone you know has gone through the foreclosure process, what that person can expect next is an eviction lawsuit if you don't move out. So after a foreclosure, that's a big word. It just means you don't own the house anymore. If you're no longer the owner, that means you're a tenant. Now, you don't have a lease, so you're what's referred to as a tenant at sufferance or a tenant at will, which basically means you're there on a month-to-month and you ain't paying rent. So the new owner can either negotiate with you, say, here's how much I'll rent the house back to you for, or they can tell you to get out. Now, again, the new owner being the being the new owner of the property, if they tell you to get out, they're going to have to follow the eviction process. The eviction process involves the tenant being given what's called a 3-day notice to vacate. It's literally, it's not a legal piece of paper. It's just a piece of paper. It either has to be handed to you, taped to the inside of your front door, mailed to you by certified mail, or posted on your front door in an envelope titled important documents and mailed to you the same day. And it says you got 3 days to get out. If you're not out in 3 days, in 3 calendar days, not business days, then on day 4, the new owner will go down to your local justice of the peace court in whatever neighborhood you live in and file an eviction to ask the judge for a court order to tell the sheriff to remove you from the property. Now, that process takes some time, but most evictions are resolved in about 2 months. So if your home has been foreclosed on by your HOA or by a mortgage company or whoever, the eviction process can be really fast, and you could be made homeless in 2 months. It's literally the end of the road, and I hope no one that you know or no one that you or that you personally don't ever have to go through that process, as way too many people in the greater Houston area have. But if you're in that situation, please reach out to Lone Star Legal Aid, or someone in a community organization that can point you in the right direction and help you plan for the future. Now, we've just talked about worst case scenarios, right? I've talked about what the eviction process looks like. I'm sorry, the foreclosure process looks like, and then after foreclosure, the eviction. But Texas law also provides what's called a right to redeem. Now, what does that mean? That means I have a right under Texas law to get my house back, to become the owner of my house again. You have the right to buy it back or redeem after a homeowners association forecloses on you. So again, we're going to split into 2 categories: subdivision style house and condo. Subdivision style house or townhomes have 180 days after the HOA foreclosure auction. So you can quibble about a day or two, but thinking about my example earlier, the next foreclosure Tuesday in Texas is September 3rd. If a subdivision style house, an HOA, had foreclosed on someone on September 3rd, they have the right to buy it back for 180 days from September 3rd. So that puts you in like early March. Does it? No. Yeah, it puts you between then and the end of February. This process is governed or regulated by Texas Property Code section 209.011. There's certain fees that you have to pay to the new owner. I didn't specify all of this on the slide, but if you're in this situation, I highly recommend you talk to someone who's a lawyer. You can reach out to Lone Star Legal Aid. You can reach out to private lawyers. You just need to have someone guide you through this process, because it can be complicated, and 6 months or 180 days can go by a lot faster than you think. Now, for condos, they have a different process. They do have the right to redeem, but they only get 90 days. I'm not going to pretend to understand why. I'd speculate it's because condos cost less, you need less time, but also the assessments are charged monthly. And so what happens during that 90 days from the date of the foreclosure auction is every assessment that the new owner pays, in order to redeem, you're going to have to pay them back the foreclosure sale amount plus every assessment. So if this were to go on for longer than 90 days, like that bill that the old homeowner has to pay to get their property back is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger every month. So this slide is out of order, but this is what I mentioned earlier. I apologize. Post-foreclosure evictions, this is where I talk about the 3-day notice to vacate. If you've not left, the next step will be an eviction lawsuit. The post-foreclosure eviction, you actually will have an opportunity to be in front of a judge, but I can tell you, 9 times out of 10, well, I won't put statistics on it. There are defenses to evictions, but they're very hard to raise if you don't have a lawyer working with you, because evictions move fast. Some justice of the peace courts are hearing 30, 40, 50 evictions in 2 hours, which means you've got less than 5 minutes. So it really helps to have someone who's experienced and showing you and guiding you through the process, helping you assert whatever defenses you might have. But after after a foreclosure, you're very, very close to, no longer being able to legally stay in the house. And that's what I want to emphasize. Foreclosure means your legal ownership right is gone. Eviction means your legal right to be there, to stay there, is gone. You remember nothing else. You can just substitute "I can't be here anymore" for the word eviction. So let's do a quick update on the Texas Homeowners Assistance Fund. This was a grant program that was started in 2022, so it's a little more than 2 years old, that was aimed at helping people pay their mortgages, taxes, and HOA debt. Now, unfortunately, it closed to all new applications in October 9th of 2023, so almost a year ago. They were working through a backlog through April 2024, so about 4 months ago. You can check the Texas Homeowners Assistance Fund website, and you will see that they are in the final payments stage. They have a dashboard where you can check to see how they work through their payments. I checked this morning. They have about $3,000 left. They started out with over 700 million. So they've helped a lot of homeowners. They helped them with a lot of money, but this is no longer a resource. So you might ask yourself, well, why is this included? There was a lot of outreach. My organization talked about this. Many other organizations talked about this all across Texas. I want to make sure people understand that it wasn't, fake. It was a real program. It had a real impact, but it's really gone now too. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I see a few in the chat. Let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen. Bear with me 1 second.
So, Amir, really quick for those folks that maybe are just joining by phone or can't see, can you say your contact information, or how does somebody reach out to Lone Star if they want to apply for your service?
Sure thing. So you can go to our website, which is www.lonestarlegal.org. The Apply Now button is right in the middle of that homepage, so you're not going to have to search around. You might have to scroll down maybe half an inch, depending on how big your screen is. But that's the best and most convenient way to apply. You can also contact us. We have a 1-800 number, which I read earlier, but I'll read you our local Houston number now by calling 713-652-0077. And that will help you submit an application to Lone Star Legal Aid. Once you're determined to be eligible, if you have an issue with your HOA, your file is more than likely going to be routed to me or a member of my team. And then we'll take a look at it and see what we can do to help you.
Okay. All right. Let me go back to the first question here. Oh, okay. Never mind. I put that link for the HOA certificate search website in the chat.
I love it.
But I'll include that also in the email when I send out the link of this recording too. Let's see. If a homeowner is trying to avoid paying their fees by putting the home into an estate, how would you approach collections, or can you collect?
That's a great question. I honestly have no idea. There would be a few follow-up questions I'd have to ask, like what kind of estate? Is this the estate of a deceased person? Did you transfer it to are you talking about a trust? The trust is something that can be set up while someone's alive. Like I could set up a trust and transfer my stuff to it. But yeah, I don't have enough information to answer that question.
Someone unmuted themselves, the person that answered that question, asked that question.
Yes, I think it's put in a trust. The person that did that is still alive, and he is the owner of the homeowner of the home.
Okay, so with that information, to answer it the short answer is yes, the HOA can still collect. It just might take a little bit longer. I know that's not super detailed, but the main thing here is for condos, HOAs have a lien that's created by law, like literally part of Chapter 82 of the Texas Property Code says HOAs have a lien. If you don't pay your assessments, HOAs can foreclose. For subdivisions, think of the suburbs, think of the townhomes that I kept coming back to. The lien is created by those declarations, which is a contract, which means when you or whoever bought the house, you agreed that they had a lien. Even if that person transfers the property to a trust, that lien right still attaches to the dirt, to the land, to the house, even if whoever owns the land is not the same person. So there's the way I think of it is the trust just creates one extra hoop to jump through. If I'm on the HOA side, they'll still be able to collect because they still have that lien property right that doesn't get extinguished by the trust.
Yeah, so there's no way to actually avoid paying the HOA fees or anything like that, regardless if you put it in a trust or if it's someone is deceased and it's now in their estate, or the fee is still there.
Right. The assessments are created by the declarations, and it's just like, It's like when you buy a car, right? I signed a contract with Don McGill Toyota, and I said, I'll pay you this much money for this car. And if I don't follow it, they're going to take something from me. They're going to take my car. Same thing when you buy a house. I signed a contract saying I want to buy this house. You didn't sign a contract with your HOA, but part of it is the HOA existed before you, and anybody who buys in there is kind of buying with knowledge that the HOA exists. And so if you don't pay your assessments, they can take your house. But I want to emphasize, like I've talked about the worst case scenario because I mean lawyers, we don't see it's not happiness and rainbows for lawyers. People come to us when there's problems. So I see problems. I'm a hammer. When I see a nail, I'm going to hit it. But HOAs do not want to foreclose on you. I don't represent HOAs. I represent homeowners, but I have friends that represent HOAs. I've worked with enough of those lawyers. Their number one goal is just to get you to follow the rules. And so just, avoid foreclosure, make sure you understand. That's why I spent so much of this on like understand the basics, see where they're coming from. And they don't want to foreclose on you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your question. Do residents have a voice in selection of a management company?
Kinda. I wish I could say yes. I wish I could say no. You do through your elected HOA board representative. So again, going back to the board is made up of volunteers. Those volunteers run for election. You elect them, and you can pay attention to what they're going to do by attending the meetings. And at those meetings, the HOA board will decide what management company to hire. Do you get to be in the room when they're negotiating with the management company? No. Do you get to be in the room when they're interviewing, like management company 1, management company 2, management company 3? There's no right to it. Some HOAs might want to be extra transparent and allow that, but I've never seen it, and they're not required to do it. So the short answer to Miss Leticia, who asked that question, was kind of. It's kind of like, do I get to decide how my tax dollars are spent? I mean, kind of. You elect people to Congress or you elect people to Austin, and they decide. So there's some influence there, but you're not directly in control of the process.
Mm-hmm. So the elections happen the same, regardless if it's political election or HOA elections, the same thing.
I've heard a phrase in the last couple of years: elections have consequences. Just think about it like that, right? I hate to be dialed in on everything. And I mean, I'm a lawyer. I don't read everything that I sign. I don't pay attention to every little thing. But, if this is something that interests you, you've now been empowered with the knowledge, you can follow it a little bit more competently, right? Like you're not just kind of like, what does this mean? What does that mean? It's like, well, you have a little bit of a guidepost to follow this process and pay attention to those HOA board elections.
Or always volunteer to be on the board yourself, run for election. That way you'll be right in the loop on everything. I had a question in regards to contracts, kind of similar to what you were saying, contracts that HOAs enter into, i.e. like garbage pickup. In my particular subdivision, I've never had to pay for trash service since I've been here. And all of a sudden now, because an audit was done and I was never charged, oh, by the way, we've never charged you all this time, so we're going to go back and charge you from the first of the year if you want us to resume your like, wait a minute, what? I don't see anything in any of my paperwork that says that I'm supposed to be paying for the trash. I assume that it was covered by the HOA fees. So how do you handle something like that when the subdivision enter into contracts with other people that the cost is then put back onto the residents?
So you kind of bent over a barrel there. I'm just going to be honest with you. Because like who wants to have piles of trash just piling up and no one's picking them up? Now, that being said, the short answer to your question is be curious and ask questions, right? I think the fact that you're asking this question, it shows that, this doesn't pass the smell test. This does not make sense to me. Please explain this to me in a way that I can justify myself giving you more money. Now, to come back to it, your assessments, whether they're monthly or yearly, are paying for certain services that you may or may not have realized you were getting. So it might have been as simple as, and this goes back to one of the things I mentioned, common HOA issues with mismanagement, right? If you think about all the layers that go into running an HOA, you have volunteers who may or may not know what they're doing, but their heart's in the right place. And then a management company who ideally knows what it's doing because the HOA is literally paying them for that expertise.
Mhm.
And then they're hiring another contractor, right? A trash service or a lawn care service or a pool service. If there's any mismanagement in one of those three links, and that's just one example, you can see how it wouldn't pass the smell test to an individual like yourself. Any homeowner gets that letter and it's like, this doesn't make sense. I would just be curious, get more information. And once you have more information, it really comes down to you're now empowered with that information to decide what you want to do. If the HOA, through its bylaws or through its declaration, says we're going to provide trash service, more than likely you're going to be responsible for paying it. But I would want to know, like, why is this now more? Why are you now asking for more?
But wouldn't it say that the tenants or that the residents would be responsible for paying for the trash service in the bylaws?
More than likely, yes. More than likely, yes. And the thing is, that's why you would want to look at in terms of bylaws, like, has there been any change since the neighborhood was initially created? Right? Like a lot of neighborhoods in the greater Houston area, if you're still inside the Grand Parkway, that home was probably 20 to 40 years old. And so things change that could not have been anticipated in those declarations that were created in the early 2000s or in the late 80s or early 90s. And if those things have changed, they've been documented in the bylaws or meeting minutes where the HOA saying we are a corporation, we have to follow these steps, we have to document everything, is now going to charge its homeowners for the tax services. So I wish I had a perfect answer to say, oh yeah, follow this process. There's a process. You just need to get more information to get it.
I've requested it. How long generally, if a resident, the homeowner wants information from their HOA or the management company, how long generally are you supposed to give them to submit the information to you? I mean, are you entitled to get that information? Like, if I want to see the contract where it says your residents are going to be responsible for making these payments.
You got me opening my book. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I know where to look. It's in chapter 209 of the Texas Property Code. Give me one second.
Not even just in regards to trash. I mean, anything. So if a homeowner was interested in, hey, you're now charging for your pool services or something, or you paying for your pool tags, and we're charging the fees back to you and blah blah whatever. Or if you want to look at a copy of the financials, how, because you're entitled as the homeowners in the association to see the financials, to see where everything is being paid, or how the money's being, or how your fees are being spent.
Right. So all of the answer to all of your questions on all those records is going to be the same. It's under chapter 209.005 of the Texas Property Code. And I can read fast, but give me a minute.
You said chapter 209.005?
Yes, ma'am. So generally, they have to produce the records or make them available for you to come look at the 10th business day after you receive the request. Now, they can ask for more time as long as they update you within that 10 business day. And basically, it's 10 to 25 business days is when they have to produce the document. So if you think of business days, that's 2 normal human weeks, or 25 business days being basically a normal human month. And that is the kind of time period you're looking at in terms of getting more information, getting access to the records. Hey, how are you spending the money? I will tell you, the best run HOAs that I've seen are very transparent. So they put this in, they have more than one meeting a year. Maybe they'll have them quarterly, maybe they'll have them every other month. And they put this information in an easy to run packet that they give to people before the meeting. There's no requirement that the HOAs do that, but this is more of an endorsement for getting involved yourself, right? If you live in a subdivision or a condo and you think the HOA is not run well, you know, sometimes you just got to look within and say, look, I need to be a part of the solution and run to get elected to the board. And if you're elected, maybe you can start forcing that change. These HOAs, by collecting that money and being run like a corporation, they have money to solve these problems. Like, okay, we're going to find a better management company that's going to prepare this information for us and make it available online for our homeowners, our condo owners. We're going to find a better management company or a better vendor who can help us tackle this information problem, this knowledge gap. And so these laws exist to force this information. Most people just say, why can't you just give me this information? And the best run HOAs will. They'll be proactive. But 209.005 is where you can get access to the association records, which includes all the information that you just asked about, Nia. That's a great question.
All right. Another question that I had, when you said that HOAs can't foreclose on a homeowner for other fees other than the assessments, but they can still threaten you, is that legal for them to threaten foreclosure when they know that they technically can't do it?
Yeah, so the answer is no. If they threaten foreclosure, they're violating debt collection laws because they're threatening something they can't do. When
Okay.
That's lying. Like, let's just call it what it is, right? That's lying. So Texas Property Code Chapter 209.009 is what says HOAs cannot foreclose on you but for assessments. Now, that only applies to subdivisions and townhomes where you don't share a wall. For condos, I honestly don't know. I haven't ever run across that. I have to double check Chapter 82 of the Property Code. But what I have found is most HOAs are very careful of what they put in writing because they have lawyers. They hire a lawyer if they have to go through this process. And when they send a letter or they file a lawsuit, they're going to say, you owe us money for these fines, or you owe us $200 a day for your non-compliance, but they never threaten foreclosure. Because if they did, and that homeowner gets a lawyer, or maybe that homeowner has done their homework, that's a clear violation of at least the Texas debt collection laws, possibly also Texas Deceptive Trade Practices Act, the DTPA, maybe even similar federal laws as well. And so that opens the HOA up to having to pay the homeowner money.
When deed restrictions, et cetera, are updated, how soon must residents be informed, and via what venues must they be notified?
So deed restrictions are hard to update. So because a deed restriction literally changes the document that created the HOA and created its powers. Most deed restrictions, when I use the term deed restriction for everybody who's listening, we're talking about the declarations or the CC&Rs. I'm literally talking about the exact same thing. Most deed restrictions will have a threshold for amending them. Like 2/3 of the homeowners need to be notified. There's a process by which they need to be notified, and that process is different. It's all written in your contract. So it could be by posting it on the website, by posting it at the neighborhood clubhouse, could be by mailing a letter out to every single homeowner. But unless they get 2/3, and I'm 2/3 and 75% of the numbers I've seen that's not set in Texas law, that is the only way that deed restrictions can be amended. And then when they're amended, this goes back to how I've talked a lot about the regulations that HOAs have, but not every single thing that an HOA does is regulated. So like the best run HOAs would say, hey, here's a letter or here's an email. The deed restrictions have been amended. Here's a copy. So you know what you're up against. But there's no requirement to do that. The notification process would be on the front end saying, hey, we're going to try, and this is what it's going to say. Please come to the meeting and let us know if you're going to vote for or against, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I've heard it's almost next to impossible, considering there's no way to really notify majority of the property owners themselves, because a lot of them don't live in your local area. They're out of town, out of the country, and so on and so forth. So they have no information as to actually make contact with them. The same thing with actually creating deed restrictions. I think it's the same thing.
So creating deed restrictions, The way that works is it's one person in charge, and that's the developer, right? The developer could be, you know, in the Woodlands, there's
for an existing neighborhood that doesn't have deed restrictions.
Oh yeah, for an existing neighborhood, you're following the same process, right? You
Mhm.
need, because you're literally you're creating a corporation that's going to have the right to take your house. And there's going to be, Texas has very strong protections for people's homes. Like they cannot be foreclosed on except for a few limited exceptions. And HOAs are not one of them. So how do they get around it? Well, if you consent to it, that's one way to get around it. But you need a lot of people to consent to it. So yeah, it's very difficult. And most neighborhoods are at least 100 houses. So that means you need 66 to 75% of people to agree. And that's hard to do, you know?
Oh yeah, you can have my house.
Yeah, exactly.
Can they foreclose on consistently late fee payments?
So this is where I'm going to be a lawyer for a little bit. Fees, no, right? Fees are not assessments. But if you're talking about assessments, if you're consistently late, maybe. So most declarations will say, if you're late on your assessments, we're going to charge a late fee, and then we're going to charge interest. To avoid foreclosure, you need to pay everything that's tied to those assessments. And if you're consistently late, but you're consistently getting caught up, then you're consistently removing the threat of foreclosure. But if there's like a running balance, even if it's a small amount, right? Your assessments are $100 a year. You're 1 month late, they charge a $15 late fee, but you only paid $100, and that $15 late fee keeps going and it goes over to the next year. In theory, the HOA could foreclose on you for $15. I've never seen it for that small of an amount. I've seen as low as $750, but that was 2 to 3 years of my clients allegedly not paying. In the example that I shared earlier. But to come back to that question, can they consistently foreclose on late fees? No. Fees are generally charged for like painting your house pink, not fixing your fence, all the things we talked about earlier. Assessments, if there's any debt tied to the assessments, late fees, interest, what have you, yes, the HOA can foreclose on that, no matter how small amount it is.
When you have fees, like an absorbent amount of fees because of a fence or a roof or paint color or whatever it is, can at any time the HOA refuse to accept your assessment because of the fees or apply your assessments to a fee?
No, it cannot. So this is one of the places where there's a clear Texas law here, chapter 209.0063. It's called the priority of payment statute, which says like when a homeowner tenders payment, it doesn't matter what I name it. That payment has to be applied towards current assessments, then past due assessments, then interest and fees on those assessments, then attorney's fees on those assessments, and then anything else. Right. And that's where anything else is really where you're going to fall into the fees. And that's designed to avoid, prevent HOAs from being able to, basically do creative accounting to take people's homes. But I want to emphasize, like, I see the problems. I'm the lawyer who sees the problems. Most HOAs are not a problem. They're highly regulated, and most of them follow the law.
At any time, can an HOA refuse to take your assessment if you owe fees?
No, they can't, but they think they can. I smile because I have dealt with this. I literally talked to a colleague about it this morning, and I've dealt with it many, many times. I'm trying not to go too deep into the lawyer weeds on this, but HOAs have rights under a contract. Like, it's a piece of paper. It's called the declarations, but it's an agreement in writing between two people. That's a contract. Texas law says when you're a party to a contract, if someone gives you money, you got to take it to mitigate whatever money they might owe you. It's called the mitigation of damages. It's very clear, it's been around for decades, principle of contracts. And you don't know how many HOA lawyers that get on the phone or via email and they're like, no, we don't have to take it. And it's like, what are you doing, man? Your client, you literally have to do this. Here's the explanation for why you have to do this. And it's like, no, I don't think I have to. Okay, then I guess I'll see you in court, which is frustrating because, I went through the numbers earlier in the slides, but, there's 100 lawyers, 100 and some odd lawyers at Lone Star Legal Aid and 2 million people, right? And that's just for low income Texans. For middle class Texans who are dealing with their HOAs. If the HOA's lawyer says something, you might take it as just, I'm going to have to pay and deal with it. And it's wrong. So until there's more clear regulation, I think you're going to still get pushback from HOA's lawyers. But in my opinion, and I am giving you my legal opinion now, HOAs are required to take your payment and they have to apply it to assessments because the law is very clear on that.
Mm. Okay. All right. I've been monitoring the social media here as well as the chat. Do you need 2/3 to create an ACC?
So an ACC, I'm assuming means Architectural Control Committee. That's the committee I mentioned earlier that kind of says, yes, you get to build that new chimney on your house, or not, yes, you can rebuild your fence. Do you get 2/3? There's not a law that says you need a certain amount of votes from everyone in the subdivision or condo to create an ACC. This is really going to be driven by the declarations and the bylaws. So do you need it? It depends. It depends on what your HOA's bylaws and declarations say.
Oh, shoot.
Yield? Just yield. Yes, ma'am. You're unmuted again. Go ahead.
Guidelines. Do you need 2/3 to create ACC guidelines?
So I'm sorry if it seems like I'm going to repeat myself here, but like the ACC guidelines would really fall in the place of like the HOA board's bylaws. So the HOA board itself, whether it's 5 people, 7 or more, can create those guidelines with basically a majority of whoever's at the meeting. And that doesn't mean like a majority of the homeowners. It means a majority of who's on the board. So if you got 5 people at the board meeting, you need 3 of them to vote on creating Architectural Control Committee guidelines. This is really, and that's an example, right? I'm not saying these are the numbers you need to remember. Please take that as an example. Going back to, this is legal information, not legal advice. But this is an example of corporate law controlling how HOAs work. And I touch on it at the beginning and we dance around on it, but I mean, this could be a whole nother 3 hours of corporate law that I don't think most homeowners want to know, on how HOAs have to act and how they follow their rules and all the things, all the I's they have to dot and the T's they have to cross, on how to create those guidelines. It's a great question. I understand it, but it's dependent and it's corporate law specific.
Okay, back to the question that was answered previously about deed restrictions. Is there how does that equate to the bylaws? Is there a certain amount of time or when there's a change in the bylaws, when residents have to be notified about changes in the bylaws?
So this is going to seem circular, but the bylaws will tell you how often and how easily the bylaws can be changed. Because
so it's not just from month to month, they can make whatever changes that they want.
Right. You have to think about it from a point of view that Texas law gives HOAs, they give them a box to work in, but it's a pretty big box, right? We're going to give you a lot of room to do things. And in that, HOAs can make their boxes smaller with tighter bylaws. And then if you think about it from a practical standpoint, if you're going to legally follow the bylaws and not get sideways on corporate law and get sued by one of your homeowners, you're going to want to document everything. And that means meetings, that means minutes, that means a management company needs to be involved. Your lawyer probably needs to be involved. That can be expensive. So you can see an HOA, I could see an HOA updating its bylaws annually, maybe once every 2 years, but monthly, it would just become, honestly, it's a volunteer to say, this is a waste of my time, right? I'm here to make sure the neighborhood is nice and the pool is kept, staffed with lifeguards and what have you. I'm not here to write new rules every month to trick people. Does that make sense?
Yep. Okay. All righty. I believe those are all the questions. I don't see anything else in the chat. And I don't see anything else that was asked. You pretty much answered everything else that was already emailed to me. Yep, you answered everything else. So I do believe that's it. Oh, in addition to our monthly assessments for our condo, there are occasionally special assessments for major expenses. How are those special assessments handled regarding foreclosure?
It's a great question. And one that I know personally. My dad lives in a condo, and there was a special assessment issued after Hurricane Beryl because the condo building's roof was damaged. And so the HOA has created a budget, right, for 2024. They weren't budgeting for a hurricane. You can have insurance, but you don't know, you never know how much damage there's going to be. And so in late July, the association basically redid their budget analysis, figured out how much they were going to need, and they issued a special assessment. And basically the dictate was you have to pay it because this is a bill that the HOA itself for the condo has to pay. And so the only source of money is from its homeowners. So coming back to Patricia's question, how are those assessments handled regarding foreclosure? The exact same way as a normal assessment. So it can be very frustrating to get that. In my dad's case, it was like $2,700 when the normal assessments are $200 a month. So one-time $2,700 expense is not expected. But if you don't pay your assessment, if you don't pay your special assessment, it's treated almost exactly the same way as a regular assessment. And I emphasize almost because under the law, it's exactly the same. Most HOAs for condos will give you a little bit more time to pay. They're not required to, but going back to my dad's example, like the notice was issued in late July, and they gave people until the end of October to pay it, right? Here's the number. We're not going to say you need to pay it in August in 1 month. You have 3 months to pay it. So, and if it's not paid, going back to Patricia's question, that can lead to a foreclosure. That's a great question.
Mm, mm, mm. Get on the board, people. Get on your boards. If you want to stay updated, stay in the meeting, stay in the meeting, stay in the meeting. So, oh wow, thank you very much, Amir. I enjoy having the conversations with you and the going back and forth. It's so informative. I hope everybody that's tuning in or that's joined us on this meeting today got all the information that they needed. I will again put the contact and the link for Lone Star Legal Aid if you do find yourselves in need or if you have questions because you're experiencing a foreclosure. Please feel free to reach out to Lone Star and our other legal services partners to make sure that you get some help. Please don't lose your house. Don't wait till the last minute. Foreclosures first Tuesday of every month. By the time you get that notice that a foreclosure is getting ready to happen or the auction is getting ready to happen, you've already kind of missed out on a whole lot of other stuff that probably could have prevented it from even going to auction. So don't wait till the last minute. If you guys know of anybody that is experiencing a foreclosure, let them know that there is assistance out there that's available that can potentially help with stopping a foreclosure. So again, Amir, thank you very much. Appreciate your help, appreciate your time. It's always a pleasure listening to the information and your expertise. We really appreciate you guys doing this every single month. So next month we are back to the mortgage foreclosures, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have one question about, I didn't hear it, and he may have mentioned it, but if there is a renter in your home that is creating ongoing issues with homeowners association, fees are developing, is that coming at the renter or is that coming at the owner of the property?
That's a great question. Leticia's short answer is it's the owner's problem. So even though the renter is creating the issue, the renter's there because of the owner. And the HOA has a relationship, like a contractual relationship with the owner. If you have a well-run or reasonably run HOA, they might say, hey, your tenant's causing some problems, please fix it. No fines, no whatever. But if they start fining it, they're fining you as the owner. And then, depending on your lease or your agreement with your renter, you might be able to pass those fees along. But long story short, the HOA is not going to be looking at your renter for to fix the problem. They're going to be looking to you as the owner to fix it because it's your property. You're responsible for it.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Okay.
Happy to help.
All right. What else we got coming up? So next week we have our coffee and conversation. We're gonna have Rachel to talk a little bit more about that, as well as our property tax exemptions and payment options that's going to be next week. So Rachel, do you want to talk about coffee and conversation real quick?
Yeah, so our coffee and conversation will be held at our Cashmere Multi-Service Center from 10 to 12, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Tuesday, August 27th. We welcome all to attend, not just those in the Cashmere area. Department of Neighborhoods, IPS Division, Inspections and Public Service, will be there to provide education on what they do as far as code enforcement regarding overgrown weeded lots, abandoned buildings, a portion of illegal dumping. Illegal dumping is not just one division or one department in the city that addresses it, HPD as well as solid waste also does address, but Dawn does address a portion of it, so we'll be discussing that. There will be a representative from Houston Volunteer Lawyers there doing eligibility intake for those that are looking to possibly qualify for free assistance with creating a will or estate plan. So that's an opportunity to determine eligibility there. Also 311 will be present to again, talk about how their process is with 311 when you're reporting incidents in your community. So again, that's Tuesday, August 27th, 10 to 12 at the Cashmere Multi-Service Center. And then our property taxes and exemptions workshop will be at 1 p.m. At the Sunnyside Multi-Service Center. Again, for those that don't necessarily live in Sunnyside, it's open to all. So we encourage attendance for our in-person workshop. We are trying to get back to doing some workshops in person because we know the one-on-one the one-on-ones were just as important as the virtual. So we want to get back into the community, and we'll be hosting workshops monthly in different areas. So we're trying to, be as inclusive as possible. So you are more than welcome to do that. Also, speaking of in-person workshops, on September 5th, we'll have our will and estate planning workshop conducted by Lone Star Legal Aid on September 5th from 1 to 3 at our 3rd Ward Multi-Service Center, and that's open to all as well.
Okay, great. And bear with us, please, folks. Before we came to this virtual platform, we were in person in various neighborhoods around the city. But considering the amount of the workshops that we've got, it will be next to impossible for us to be in every single neighborhood, every single month with every single one of these workshops.
Yeah.
So we're trying to kind of spread them out based on the availability of our volunteers who actually present these presentations. So do keep that in mind as you're asking, what about us? And what about us? And why don't you do this one over here and come over here and come over here? Just kind of bear with us for a minute and until and note that these are volunteers that are actually coming out to provide this information to you guys, so they can't be everywhere every day in every single neighborhood giving this information out, which is why we ask that you guys pay it forward and help us with getting this information out to those communities that don't necessarily have a computer or, may not be able to come in person for a meeting. Gather the information that you can and spread it out to as many people as you can. So we're all trying to do our part to make sure we get as much information out as we possibly can. And we thank you all. We appreciate you all for continuing to support the month of service collaboration and all of the workshops. And as Rachel had mentioned earlier, if there are some workshops that we don't currently have that you all may be interested in, please feel free to reach out to us and we can see what we can do about getting it on the schedule for you guys. we update our calendar and our schedules kind of throughout the year based on the feedback that we do receive from you guys. So at the end of each of our workshops, there is a link to do a really quick survey if we can get some feedback from you guys at following this um, presentation. That would be extremely helpful, and you can jot down any other potential topics that you'd like on that survey as well. So you all take care of yourselves, stay safe, check on your neighbors. It is hot out there again. And we'll be again tomorrow. So please check on your neighbors and those loved ones, especially our seniors, that may be a little bit too prideful about sharing that they need some kind of help or some kind of assistance. So definitely check on them as well. But again, thank you again, Amir. We will see you all next time. We'll be back next month with our mortgage foreclosures, where we're talking about regular mortgages, home equity, lines of credit, and reverse mortgage foreclosures. And we are always here for foreclosure on the fourth Thursday of each month. So we will see you guys next month on the 26th with more foreclosure information. So tune in then. And you all have a wonderful afternoon. Take care of yourselves and stay safe. See you next
Thank
time.
you.
Bye-bye,
Take
everyone.
care. Thank you all.
Bye-bye. Oh.